Hello, good evening. So this is author James Rosone talking today with Brandon Ellis. Now I'm coming to you from Tampa, Florida. And Brandon, you are coming to us from where?
Bali, actually Ahmed Bali
In Indonesia.
in
Wow.
Indonesia.
The other
Yep,
side of the world. So it's kind of ironic because we've been trying to arrange this call and we're dealing with all these mad, crazy time zones. So
yeah.
it's 8:24 p.m. here in Tampa. And what time is it there?
It's 8:24 a.m.
The next day.
Yeah, the next day.
I'm
It's
talking.
I think
So I'm
it's
talking to you in
Thursday
the
today.
future and you're talking to me in
Yeah,
the past.
exactly.
We're
Look at
time
this
traveling.
technology.
I know, we're
Um,
time traveling.
the technology here though isn't so great, so internet might be in and out. So keep that in mind.
Yeah,
So yeah,
understandable. And I've got a 7-month-old baby in the background, so she could, make an entrance and decide to talk with
that'd be
us as
great.
well.
I have an 8-year-old in the room right next door, or right there. She might come in. When I'm on podcast, she usually likes to come in and sit on my lap for a moment. So
Nice.
hopefully that's okay.
So one of the things readers love to know is they like to know more about the authors. The behind the author, is kind of an interesting thing to learn more about. Like, what did you do beforehand? So one of the questions that people ask me to ask you guys is, what was your first job and where did you grow up?
My very first job, I was a landscaper. I grew up in Gladstone, Oregon. Freshman year, my dad, he said he pretty much wanted me to start learning how to work and
Your
what
freshman
that
year in high school or
entailed.
college?
High school. And so I was a landscaper in the rain and not in the snow, but in the rain and in the sun, just whenever it was my uncle who owned the company. And so he paid me a good amount. I learned a lot. I worked all the way to freshman in college. So yeah, about 4 or 5 years I was doing landscaping. And it's not the landscaping where you're mowing lawns. It's the landscaping where you're actually digging ditches and planting
Building
big old
something.
trees and
Yeah.
and creating. One time I planted 180 arborvitae in a storm. That was hell. So yeah, it's all like all it's all that stuff. That's what I did. After that, I did Dryer's ice cream for about 3 years. I was in the warehouse.
Okay.
So yeah.
Fun stuff. It reminds me of
I
a
don't. Do you
job.
want me to keep going with my work stuff?
No, it's okay with that. I was gonna say it reminds me when I was in college. I spent a winter break. I worked for Super Value Warehouse. They paid like 18 bucks an hour, but they stuck me in
Oh,
the ice
nice.
cream room, and so I was a grocery picker basically. So I'd drive a pallet jack with 2 pallets on the back, and then get an order.
Yep.
I'd have to go pick all these, massive cases of ice cream, load this pallet up, and then load up the truck. Well, it's freaking cold, man. In an ice
Load the
cream
truck.
room,
Yep.
it's minus
It's
30
negative 20
degrees in that
degrees.
room. Yeah, minus 30
Ours is
degrees is
minus
terrible.
20, and we would have to pick really fast. So you pick the ice cream, and you have these struts or these metal beams right. Just it is ridiculous because you constantly pick up, and you're going fast, so you're not really thinking. So you're picking up ice cream and banging your head on the beam and putting it like there. I remember I saw one guy named Dallas, and he was usually our fastest picker, and he did it for an ego thing. He was all into like, I'm the best. So he would he grabbed one and lifted up, and he was just in front of me, and he hits his head and just goes face plant right on the ground. He's just on the ground. I think he kind of knocked himself out, but it was funny. So yeah, that's picking. That's job. I had 3 warehouse jobs like that.
Oh man, yeah, that was I had that warehouse job, and then I worked for UPS loading trucks. So we would get the packages
Oh
coming
yeah.
down from the belt, and you look at the zip code and figure out which truck it got loaded into, and did that. So I did that in college, where we would show up at 10 o'clock at night, and we would work till 3 in the morning loading trucks, and then
Oh,
go
okay.
home. And I got classes at like 10 o'clock in the morning, 9 or 10 in the morning, and so it was long. But it was an interesting
Yeah.
job to do for a little while. It paid really good, so that's why I did it in college.
I did. Here's the interesting part of my life. In 2003, 2004, I was going through a divorce, and my ex-wife, my at the time, wanted to move out of the States. And so I had to show the judge that I could keep them here is a weird circumstance, that I could keep them here and pay for the alimony, pay for the house and all that stuff. So I picked up 3 freaking jobs, and I had my kids during the day. So I was a website designer. That was fine. That was easy. But then I did a warehouse job from 4 to about 2 or 3 in the morning.
Oh.
And then then right after that, I would do a newspaper route from about when I just get there to about 5, 6, 7, 8 in the morning. Then I'd go pick up my kids. So I had a year where I was doing warehouse, newsletter, websites, and getting about maybe 1 hour of sleep when I could here and there. So that's an interesting warehouse portion of my life. The warehouse job.
Man. That's a rough year. I'm glad you
made
it
that
through
sucked. I remember Thanksgiving. We didn't have to work on Thanksgiving, so I went to Thanksgiving with my parents, or I was at my parents, and I had my kids. And next thing I know, I've never done this before. I'm sleeping during every time everybody's eating, and my head is on the desk, and I'm sleeping. I keep waking up, and it was a rough portion, but
wow,
not to bring everything down.
No, but that's an interesting piece of your backstory and how you're able to persevere through that, and do that to support your kids, to make sure you're able to have time.
Yeah, because it was my kids that I wanted to be around more than anything. It scared me that they were actually able to leave. I thought that the state that I was in wouldn't allow my ex-wife to leave the state because you need a certain amount, but I guess you have to both agree on that certain amount of miles to be. I thought you couldn't be more than 60 miles away. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And apparently that's not the case. And anyway, she eventually won and was able to go down to California. So I packed up and was going to go down there, and then she actually right when I was packing up to go down there, she messages me and she says, I'm getting married, I'm heading back up to Oregon. I'm like, sweet, so I can be around the kids, back, still be in my own house and all that stuff.
And you don't have to pay out anymore once she gets married, right?
No, just child support. Yeah.
Nope.
I'm still paying child support. My June will be my last child support payment. My daughter will be graduating school, I think, depends with the COVID-19, but she's supposed to be graduating in June.
You're gonna have a high schooler out of school.
Yeah, I have a son who's a Marine too, so
that's great. Now, what does he do in the Marines?
Yeah.
What's he doing?
I forget the exact job title, but he's an engineer.
Okay.
And does something with bombs. He's not dismantling. I think he's just locating them.
Okay.
So I don't know how that's engineering, but
it's all part of the combat engineers do that kind of stuff. Yeah, we had the same thing in the Army side of the house. So yeah, no, it's pretty cool.
What did you do in the Army?
So when I first joined, I did a couple of jobs. I was doing initially communications. So I was in charge of, setting up the radios, the ComSec, making sure we had the retrans site set up and whatnot. Cause I was in a self-propelled artillery unit, 155 millimeter howitzer guns. So we had these big old Paladin artillery guns, and, they go all over the place, and we'd have to go set up these communication sites sometimes in between the different locations so they could talk with the headquarters unit, because usually the headquarters unit would be, sometimes 20, 30 miles away from the guns, while the guns would be out there firing. Wow. But the radios don't always communicate that far away over hills and valleys and things. So you set up a retrans site in between them, and that would usually be us. And so it'd be me and 2 other guys, and we'd be out all alone on our own with a Humvee with 4 antennas on it and 4 radios and hoping for the best. And wow. They trained us how to call an artillery, and so we got cross-trained as forward observers, and we were a second set of eyes to call in targets if we found any on our own. It's just us.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun. Then I decided I'd swap over and join the Air Force, and I became an interrogator in the Air Force.
Oh, wow.
Being an interrogator in the Air Force found me assigned right back to the Army, And so it was as if I never left. I just changed uniforms. So go figure.
Yeah.
But that was a fun job too. So it was an interesting job.
Interrogator would
Obviously, less
be
time
really
intensive.
interesting.
Yeah, you
Wow.
talk to a lot of bad dudes.
Yeah. Wow.
You go to a lot of bad places and you talk to a lot of bad people and you're in a lot of bad situations, and it's usually quite dangerous because there's always someone trying to kill you somewhere nearby. So it was quite an interesting job. But it's an adrenaline junkie job. It's definitely an adrenaline junkie job. That's for sure.
Wow.
That's for sure.
Wow. I gotta interview you for my newsletter, if that's okay.
Yeah, we can talk all about that, man. I got plenty of
Yeah, they
stories.
would
I can talk
love that.
wild, crazy stories of interrogations, man. I've talked to some
They would
wild, wild
love
hombres.
that.
So when did you get into writing? How did you go from the
Gosh, do a
jobs you've
book on
done to do this?
is when I was in college, 95-ish. I was taking a creative writing class, and I used to love to write and do all this cool stuff with writing through high school and middle school. Gosh, I have actually a lot of stories about writing, but this is what really got me into it. I wrote short stories in this creative writing class, and this author was a published author, and his name was Tim Schell. Incredible author, where it was the first time I would read a story and actually feel. But I was reading military sci-fi bang bang stories as a kid, and
Sure.
and I either didn't feel from the authors, but this author, even though it wasn't sci-fi, it was just a story of him being a teacher in Japan, and it was really emotional. It's like, whoa, you can really bring people's emotions up with writing. And and I started writing there, and he would pick me apart the most in the entire class. He'd get up, read. He didn't read. All the people would read the stories for homework, and then they would critique it.
Sure.
But he would critique. He would critique everybody in front of the class. But with me, he would just destroy me. I felt like shit, really. And finally, one of the classmates who'd taken a class from him before said, she came up to me. She said, he critiques the ones the worst. He gives the worst critiques to those he thinks who are the best writers. I'm like, really? I don't even know I'm just having fun. I don't know much about writing anyway. But last short story of the class, he was critiquing me. Then he just stops in the middle of the critique, and he looks at me and he goes, I will not be surprised if this guy becomes a best-selling author. And I was like, what? And then he takes me out of class after class, and he says, what is your dreams? What are you? I'm like, my dad says I should be a business person, so I'm heading to Japan. I've taken 7 years, at the time I'd taken all these years of Japanese classes, and he goes, well, you might want to think of writing. I go, it's a good hobby. He's like, no, you should really think about it. And so I've always thought about it for about 20 years. and
Wow.
and so in 2008, my older kids were probably around 10ish, 11, and they just weren't reading. So I thought, let me just write them a book. So I wrote them a fantasy book. It turned into a trilogy, and it was terribly written, but it was written fun and fast. And I sent it to an editor who said it was, okay. And the editor wasn't really an editor, it was just a friend. And so we published it on Amazon, and nothing happened.
Yeah.
And then I just got I got the publishing bug in me after that. I thought it was really neat to see my book online, and I loved the covers and looking at covers of other people, and loved it. But it was fantasy, and that just wasn't what I enjoyed writing. So I started doing sci-fi. And then 2012 is when I really launched my sci-fi business. But the thing is I didn't know anything about tropes. I didn't know much about correct grammar.
Yep.
I just didn't know character development. I didn't know any of this stuff. I never studied it. I just thought, I didn't even know about resolving a conflict. I didn't know anything like that. So these first 3 books that I wrote, these sci-fi, actually the first about 8 sci-fi books I wrote, I was learning all of that. Not continuing learning. I was starting to learn that from ground zero,
Yeah.
and as if I was just learning English. And so now, since then, since about 2017, I finally wrote a book, a series called Martian Colony Chronicles, and that's where you can actually see talent, I think, and the craft that I studied. And then I rewrote the first sci-fi books, Veil Rising. I did a trilogy. I just rewrote those now, and my ARC readers, I have over 200 ARC readers. They already are telling me how much improved I am. And the thing is I read craft every day. I make sure, and I'm now writing. You gave me the idea of writing outside of reading outside of my genre. So I am doing that, and then I'm using Jackson Dean Chase's idea of actually every day now I have a thriller, David Baldacci book, and I'm writing out a chapter, copying everything that he's doing and seeing what he's doing and how he evolves the book and all of that. And it's extremely helpful. And it's not telling me to copy I'm just emulating his style, learning from a bestseller and all that stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how I started writing.
Yeah.
Now I can safely say I'm a much, much, much better writer than I was in the very beginning. So, and usually that's the case for most authors. I work my ass off on learning how to be a good writer. I work my ass off on publishing, on even marketing Facebook. I've taken so many courses on that. The marketing Amazon, I've taken courses on that, but I'm still a little. You're the king at that. I need to learn from you. But yeah, that's kind of my writing journey.
No, it's very similar to everyone else's. You know, we all have a backstory.
Yeah.
We all started doing something else before we became writers. You know, when I first wrote my first book was called Dinner with a Terrorist, and I wrote that book originally as PTSD therapy when I got home from Iraq, because when I was working as an interrogator, I was keeping a journal, and that was my way of decompressing. And then I decided to turn my journal into a book, essentially. You know, I changed a lot of stuff to make sure I was okay with it, but you know, I published that in 2010, beginning of 2010, started in 2008 and 9. But you know, it wasn't with a very good reputable place. They didn't do much with it or anything, and then nothing happened. And then in 2015, I was laid off from one of my jobs, and I decided that, you know what, I'm going to write a book. I said, I read a lot of books. I look at this and I go, you know, I know more about this topic than these people who are writing them. So I'm going to write my own. And that's when it just kind of started and going, you know, and it's just been off to the races ever since then. You know, the first book we did, we made $87 our first month. And
87?
$87 our first month.
I made like 30 my first month. Yeah.
Yeah, it's December 31st of 2015 is when we published the book. We did a short pre-order. We managed to actually sell a few books on pre-order, all things. And then, you know, slowly we were getting, you know, 5, 10, 20 books a day, you know, moving up. And then, or a month, a month. And then, you know, it just started to build. It just started to build, you know, but I eventually got another full-time job, and I kept writing as a hobby part-time on the weekends and at night. And I had 4 books under my belt at that point, and then they sold part of the company off, and a bunch of us were laid off in the process. And I said, well, forget this. If I can work 60 to 80 hours a week for a corporation, I can work that hard for myself writing books. And it's been off to the races ever since.
Wow.
So, you know, necessity is the
That's
mother of all
awesome.
inventions, is what they say, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You become resourceful. That's my thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have
when
to,
I was,
you're not going to make your mortgage payment anymore. You got to go, okay, what am I going to do next? You know, and you say, well, let's make this work, figure it out. How can we make it work?
For a while, from 2007 Well, I retired from, I was a sports therapist from 1999 to about 2018. I retired in 2018, but my love was always in books. So in 2017, I wrote a series called Atlantis. And for some reason, it took off. And take off doesn't mean like I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a day or something like that.
Sure.
Taking off was I was making $2,000 to $4,000 a month, and that was
good.
great supplemental income. And then
Absolutely.
by the time I was ended the book, I did 5 books. I did this promotion for it. I created a box set for it is what I did. I was making almost 20 grand a month, and I was just like, okay, I can definitely stop my sports therapy thing and not worry about that, and use this money to focus on publishing. And so that's what I did. And I'm not there anymore, 20,000 a month, but I've taken quite a long time honing my skills. So now I'm back to writing again. But yeah, it's writing. So with sports therapy, what I found was I could easily make 10 grand. I shouldn't say easy, 5 to 10 grand a month. But that's about as much as I could do unless I was working 24 hours a day. So this is something that I can do as an absolute love. And as you know, the money can, it just depends. Some people are making upwards of 100,000 a month. So it's really cool. And then when I was making that 20,000 a month, what I was doing was I was helping people with their rent payments, because I can't be making this much money, and I need to do something with it. I need to do something that gives back. So that's what I was doing. So that's why I want to get back to that 20,000 a month. That'd be great.
Yeah, we actually do some of that with our books. We donate a portion of our book sales to support 3 organizations. One of them is Tunnels to Towers, and provide mortgage-free homes for first responders and Gold Star members. And then the other one is Charity Water, which helps to build water wells all over the world to bring clean drinking water.
Wow, that's a cool
really
one.
cool.
I like that one.
Yeah, and then the third one is called the Underground Railroad, which helps to.
That's the one. That's one of my favorite. That's what I want to eventually. I'm so into that I would actually like to be on one of their. Because there's a guy who I used to work for named Tony Robbins, and who's on a raid with them, where they actually go in and get the evil men, and and it was really emotional for him, and it's something that for some reason really I have a lot of passion for that, and I'd love to help out in some way with that. And Lotus, Lotus is my partner. She's been working for a company that is called doTERRA. It's an essential oil company, and they give a ton of money to Underground Railroad.
Yeah,
so
great organization.
So
yeah. So I think it's neat to let the reader know that when you purchase our books, some of your money is going to support these organizations on a monthly basis, because it is about supporting others and supporting groups like that. And even just like you said, like you're using it to help pay rent or something for different people that are down and out. I look at information as power. Information is money and power. And the more that I can help pay it forward to other authors that are struggling, the better. I've got two friends of mine, and one of them, I saw his stuff on Facebook, and I reached out and started talking with him, and I helped him with doing AMS ads and understanding certain ad aspects. And he went from making, working at a 7-Eleven making $10 an hour to making over $4 grand a month, and quitting that job to do this full time now. And one of my beta readers is a retired colonel, from, he's in the Vietnam War and struggled with PTSD a lot. And he was a great source of knowledge for me, helping me with crafting better scenes. And I told him, well, why don't you write your own story about Vietnam and use that as therapy? And he did, and he got into doing that. And then we turned it into a book. And now he's got a second and a third book coming out, and he's making over $4 grand a month with just a single book. you know, and
Whoa!
yeah, we're just killing
That's
it with them.
fabulous.
I'm running his ads for him on Amazon, and we're just crushing it that way. But you know, it's really neat to see some of these authors that if you just give them the right nudge, you just kind of help them just a tad,
Yeah.
you can profoundly change not just their trajectory, but then it also changes their entire family because it's going to have that generational effect. And so it's neat to be able to
Yeah.
help people out and do that kind of stuff, you know, pay it forward.
Yeah, exactly.
So
You
what's
gotta, you
on,
gotta, I gotta,
I was going to ask you, so
was
what's on
that,
deck for you next? What are you going to be working on next now? You've moved to
uh,
Bali, so.
so I moved to Bali. The reason why I moved to Bali was to, in my mind, was to save up enough money to buy a house back in the States. With the recent changes in my book sales tanked when this whole COVID-19 happened. It
Yeah.
tanked. Like, I can't believe how much it tanked. So that dream is, I think, a little bit on hold. I shouldn't say on hold. It's still in the process. And so I'm planning here to be here till about June. So what I've been working on is Star Guild 1. I just published and launched March 15th, is a rewrite of my first sci-fi. And I'm sorry, I'm squinting because the light is just right in my eyes. Um, and I finished book 2. It's at the beta readers right now. And I am just finished my outline last night. I stayed up really late last night to finish this 3-character outline for book 3. And what's really fun about book 3 is, with Star Guild, it takes place in right before World War One, or sorry, right before World War II. And my grandparents were both my grandpas were in World War II, and so I learned a ton about World War II. They talked to me about it a lot, and so I kind of have a gist of what I'm going to do with book 3. And the reason I say that, so book 1 takes place World War II, but the main characters are taken off planet to another place by advanced ETs. They come back to Earth in book 3. It's very space opera, and it's just after World War II has ended. It's like 1949, 1940,
Wow.
I think.
So like, what do we miss?
Yeah, pretty much. And so, it takes place then, and so I have the president in it. I have Albert Einstein in it. I have all this fun stuff going on in book 3. So it's going to be a little bit of a research challenge, but I'll freaking enjoy it. I was going to have Nikolai Tesla in it, but he died in 1943, so I can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. So I'm starting my first. I like to write around 3,000 to 5,000 words a day. So I'm going to probably write. When I first start a book, I get really excited, so I'll probably write 5,000 words today in book 3. So yeah,
Nice.
that's where I'm at.
So how long do your books tend to be? What's your word count that you try to target?
I don't like book 1, Star Guild, or called Veil Rising is book 1. The space opera rewrite I just did is 140,000 words. Book 2 is about 115,000 words. Book 3 seems like it'll probably be around 140,000.
So this is some pretty meaty books.
Yeah, these are over 500, usually about 500 pages. But my Atlantis series, those are around 80,000.
Okay.
So those are 300 to almost 400 pages. And then my Martian Colony Chronicles, because I want to do this from now on, is single POVs. There's so much you can get. It's you can focus on one character. It's just nice. It's pleasant writing for me. So those are around 60,000 words when I did my Martian Colony Chronicles, just one person POV, which means
how many books have you written total so far?
Over 20. I've written probably 25, but about 22 have been published, and I think it's just showing 19 because there are several books that I've taken off. There's a bestseller. So Craig Martell, he's an indie guy, you know him. He said, bring one of your best books as your reader magnet. don't just write something sloppy and just give it away for free just to get subscribers. You want to put some of your best stuff out there. And so I took one of my best sellers off of Amazon and I made it a free reader magnet. So now people can get it off of, and it's a series, so people can get it off of on my website and all that stuff. And,
How has that worked out for you? Have you noticed any difference with that?
I could get what I used to do. I don't do that now. Are you talking about, actually, are you asking if that's changed the reader's response to their magnets? Or you seem like,
Well,
what is
just,
your
I
question,
was just kind of curious, like when you pulled the book down and now you use that book as a reader magnet and it's book one into a series. So I'm curious how it has worked as far as, one, recruiting people to sign up for your list, and then two, the read through into the subsequent books because they read the first one, or they got the first one for free and they've now read
Yeah, it's usually, I don't know what the read through is, but usually it's just, I have, actually I see the open rates. It's high open rates. It's read through. So I used to have my a trilogy on there, different series, and read through is huge, and you get a ton of responses. Almost every day you open up your email and you have I don't know, a dozen emails that you got to reply to for those books.
Sure.
Ever since I took it down and put this up, which has only been a month, I still get responses. Yeah, I think it's the same thing. It's upwards of 90%. I think read through, because that's the open rate is. So, yeah, I don't know. But what it does is, so I put a reader magnet in the front of the book and the back of the book. So people, if they open my book and want to read something free, they can click on it. If they're done with my series or done with my book and are like, oh, I want to read more from this guy, they can click on it and get another free book, or get a free book. And I used to get about 300 new subscribers a month, but I was paying Facebook ads to get those. So I'd pay about $300 to get 300 subscribers a month. And they're great subscribers. Great. I still have them. I've since stopped doing that and just getting organic, which is about 30 to 60 subscribers a month. So when I become more well-known, or when I sell more books in the future, that will obviously go up. So,
Yeah. I built my list 100% organic. It's done through my back matter of my books, or through my Facebook pages. I haven't done. I don't usually do paid stuff through Facebook. Maybe it's just because I lack the skills and I'm not very good at it. But I found it to be too expensive. And I don't do a lot of those those reader magnets that they do on BookFunnel, things like that. I did that when I first started out. And one of the big things I noticed was when you do those, most of them just unsubscribe after they get the first book, or they never end up opening further emails. And it just became one of those things that's like, why am I wasting my time on this? These people, the vast majority don't stick, and it's just not worth the effort, So I do it all organic. My list is small compared to most authors, earning what I'm earning, but my list is very active and very responsive. So I prefer to have it that way, I guess. I mean, would I like to have a 30 or 50,000 person email list? Who wouldn't? But at the same point, I know a lot of people who have a list that big, and when they send out a new release, they're still not hitting, $8,000 or $10,000 in sales. So that tells me that the list may be big, but it's not active.
Yeah.
Because you have 30,000 people on there, you should be netting 5 to 10,000 sales, one would think, of your newest book. And if that's not happening, then that's not a very active or good list anymore.
Yeah.
So it's always a challenge, though, with the mailing list, that's for sure. It's probably one of the biggest author challenges is how do you build it and how do you keep it?
Yeah. I did the same thing in the very beginning. My goal was I went to this in 2012 or 13, I believe. I went to this, there was this guy named Tim Grahl, and he would teach authors how to how to sell books, and it was called the Bestseller Summit in Tennessee. And so I flew over there and went to it. And best thing, it was all mostly for nonfiction, but the best thing I got out of it was build a newsletter list. So I thought, okay, I'm going to build 10,000. We had kind of a competition who can build the fastest list, and of course I'm competitive, so I thought I'm going to build the fastest list. And in 8 months I had 10,000 subscribers. In about probably 2 years I had 20,000. But it was Insta Freebie and Book Funnel, and actually for some reason Book Funnel seems a little bit better than Insta Freebie, or and I don't even think Insta Freebie is around anymore. I think it's named something else. But you know, your open rates would be terrible. And so I ended up cooling the list. I went down to about 8,000 subscribers. I deleted 12,000 subscribers just like that. And so that's what I'm at. I'm around almost 9,000. I was at 10,000, and then I had to, with Facebook, you know, you'll still have those unopens, a lot less than Insta Freebie. And with the Facebook subscribers that I was getting, I would say I was getting, I'd say a 40% open rate with them. So I culled that down as well. And I'm at around 8,000 subscribers. And they're pretty good subscribers. So I have some kids over here screaming and yelling and chasing dogs. So
no worries, man. Like I say, I've got 3 kids in quarantine with me, so I know what you mean.
But these aren't my kids. My kids are in quarantine in there, or my kid. My other kids are back home in the States. But,
That's funny. That's funny. Well, it's kind of neat though to hear your story of how you go about, you know, from list building and how you got into writing, you know, and how it just took off for you like that, you know, because it sounds like you had a pretty good, successful job doing the physical therapy, and then the writing took off, and you decided, you know what, I'm gonna leave this job that is a stable, successful job and go into this.
Yeah, sports therapy, sports therapy, what I was doing sports therapy was actually very hard to leave, because I was very successful because I wanted to learn how to, I'm not supposed to say this as a therapist, but fix people. So I spent my time learning osteopathy, physical therapy, deep tissue massage, structural integration, everything I could. And I'm now watching like chiropractors and therapists on YouTube, kind of missing my old job and watching them actually doing adjustments and stuff. So I guess that kind of helps relieve the I don't know, I guess, need to go and work on people. But yeah, I ultimately am so glad that I've become an author and full time, and it's the dream job. I can be anywhere I want, and hopefully, I shouldn't say hopefully, this will eventually become where I can, my dream with being an author is to help other people out financially, helping people with rent, helping the homeless. And one of my biggest dreams is to create an organization that helps homeless by sending them to Tony Robbins seminars and changing their lives. Because I've seen it. I used to work for Tony, and I'd seen homeless people go in and boom, change their lives. It was phenomenal. And so that's kind of one of the things I want to do. So my dream is to do really well in writing, something you can't really do with sports therapy, and give back to the world. I mean, I give back to the world in my small ways, but I want to make it a little bit bigger.
So you said an interesting thing there. You said you used to work for Tony Robbins. What was that experience like, and how long did you do it, and what was your job? What did you do?
I walked in to one of his offices, I guess, and I said, I want to work for Tony. And so here's the story. So Tony really changed my dad's life. Tony was early 20s, and my dad was going to his seminars where it was literally in a hotel with a small stage, and there's 20 people in there. And my mom and dad would go to him, and that was when I was in 5th grade, and I was seeing the change. And my dad was working 3 jobs, and he created instead of like, it was amazing the way he changed. So he he and my mom. So I remember when I got suspended from school in 5th grade. This is shortly after they were going to Tony Robbins. And instead of just getting, you know, big trouble, they sat me down. We talked it out, which was like completely new to me. I was like, whoa, it was very healing. They listened to me, and then they talked to the teacher and listened to the teacher. They had me write letters to the teacher. I flipped off the teacher. I didn't know what I was doing. I flipped off the teacher, and I hardly really knew what that meant, other than like I thought I was being funny. I thought I was being a clown, and I thought everybody in the class would laugh. And nope, she took my backpack, said, "Go into the office. You're suspended for 3 days." So anyway, that's what happened, and then I started seeing the change in my dad, where he was working 3 jobs, and he took a big risk, and he quit those jobs and created his own business and used Tony's techniques on creating a business. And he became the second most successful in his industry in Oregon. That's where I grew up in that state of Oregon in the United States. And he was making like, his company was making like a ton of money, like I remember figures like $26 million. And he was doing well. He was doing very well.
Yeah.
And so I was still poo-pooing it in high school. And then at age 17, my parents took me to Rose. It's a big stadium. I think it's called the Rose Quarter in Oregon. And I watched a Tony Robbins seminar, and I was just mesmerized. I was like, he's helping people. He's not just speaking. He's just not selling. He's actually helping. And so I went to one of his offices, and I said, I will work for him for free. I just want to learn stuff, because I know that if you work for him, you can go to his seminars for free and all that stuff. And I was 17. I didn't really have the money to pay for these seminars. And so instead of having me work free, they liked my initiative, and they hired me at double minimum wage. So at the time, a minimum wage was, I think, $6. I was working for $12. And pretty much what he had me do it was really easy stuff. I just think he wanted me to learn his stuff. But I was rewriting one of his training manuals for coaches. He would teach people how to become what he does, and they're called coaches. Tony Robbins life mastery coaches, or peak performance coaches. And so I would do 2 things. I would sit in the office all day and literally rewrite his book. Nothing came of it. I thought something would come of it, but I think he was just having me write it so I can also learn what I was writing.
Yeah.
And so after, and it was long, it was big, so it took me quite a long time to do that. But in the meantime, like I would go and help with the DJs, or help set up each seminar, and then I'd watch the seminars and participate in the back, and it was just amazing. So I worked for him for a year, and like I remember at a meeting, he broke down and cried. He was so thankful for people. He was just grateful for our help and being on his team. And the meetings were pretty much Tony Robbins seminars. He just really lift. He'd walk in the room and he'd lift up the room. He was just really amazing. He was the real deal, is how it was. He was authentic. I know people, it's hard for me to see comments about him, people who don't know him. And not that I know him, but I mean, I've been in his presence quite a bit. And they knock him, and they tell, how he's a snake salesman or all that stuff. And it's just, to me, it's not true. And so it's hard for me to see that. So I'm usually like, when I see that, I'm usually one of the first to jump on and defend him and stuff like that. So he's the real deal.
That's amazing. I would love to go see him in person. I've listened to several of his books on tape or on CD, and I listened to him on YouTube, and I would love to go see him in person. But man, it's really expensive. I mean, it is not cheap. It's very expensive to go see him in person, which is
he's got some,
because it's puts it out of reach of a huge swath of people, which is
He
unfortunate.
does. He does one. It's a 3 to 4 um, day seminar. It's called UPW, Unlimited Power Within, and I believe that's his. When I was, I think in early 2000, it was around 400. So my guess it might be still around that or
Never
$700.
know. His stuff
But
is up there. It's over 10 grand
yeah,
usually. It's
yeah, his Date with
expensive.
Destiny is the expensive one. I think that's around 7 to 10 grand.
Yeah.
So that's 7 days, and that's his favorite. And that's the one. If you watch I'm Not Your Guru on Netflix, that's
Yeah.
the Date with Destiny. Yeah.
I like it. I got a friend of mine who's been to, we went to one, and then I guess when you're there, they offer you some sort of discount to buy a package of several more of them. And so he
Oh,
did
okay.
that. So he went through all of his seminars and has been through
Yeah.
it. He loves it. I mean, he says it's phenomenal and great, and it puts you in an influence and a network of people that you just normally wouldn't get exposed to. And, I can attest to that part because when I when I went to grad school at Oxford, I got placed in a network of people in different positions that would never be around. I mean, I've had the opportunity to have dinner
Exactly.
with
Yeah.
some of the most phenomenal people in the world, renowned experts. I sat across the table having a 2-hour conversation with Nassim Taleb, the guy who wrote the Black Swan, book, and just one of the premier thinkers of our generation.
Oh, no way. I didn't
Yeah,
know who that. I didn't.
I had dinner with the guy
That's
for
cool.
2.5 hours after a 4-hour lecture. So, I mean, I've had opportunities like that to be around there, and I've had dinner. I've been to Rhodes House and attended events there and been around just all kinds of phenomenal speakers and people and whatnot. So I can attest to the getting into a new network of people, and that's really cool. And I would love to do that with Tony's group at some point. Maybe one of these days I'll be able to carve out the money for both me and my wife to go see him and do that one year. I'd love to do it though.
Yeah, there's a one author that I'm good friends with, and he's joined that kind of Tony Robbins club where you go to all these events, and
Mhm.
it's massively changed his life. He went from just writing books and hoping someday it would do well to this knowing it will do well, and I mean I know he's making over 150 grand a year after going to these Tony Robbins things. So it's very helpful. It's just constant motivation. So you keep going to these things, and we have all these self-doubts that creep in, and one thing that helps push those out or throw them out is going to people like Tony Robbins and doing
Absolutely.
these clubs
Repetition,
and
hearing it
meeting
over and
people
over and
who are
over
extremely
again. Yeah.
successful. Exactly. It's about repetition. It's about discipline.
Yep.
So yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like when you're in the military, the reason why they have you take your rifle apart so many freaking times, and then put it back together and take it apart and put it back together and then do it blindfold, take it apart, put it back together. They're having you do that, and then all these other maneuvers in positions, and everything you do in the military is about building muscle memory. So when you have to do it, there's
Yeah.
no how do I do this or what do I do next? It's not, you don't even think about it. Your just body just takes over and it does it. And so it's just kind of the
Exactly.
same with writing in a way. You've got to put yourself in that writer's mindset, every day. I'm going to get up. I'm going to write these 3,000 words. I'm going to crank out this book or I'm going to be homeless at the end of the month. And when you
Yeah.
have that, if you want to call it writing scared or writing motivated, whatever you want to call it, when you can do that every day, day in, day out, that's when you're going to crank out a lot of books and they're going to be good quality because at the end of the day, if I don't make it, my little girl isn't going to have, food. Well, that's a lot of
Yeah.
motivation for you to write a good book people want to read or learn how to sell that book. And you just got to find the right motivation, the right button to push.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
let's see.
habits, routines and habits. Yeah.
So we've been chatting for almost an hour now. We probably should go ahead and end it because I know you want to get to breakfast and I need to double check to make sure the munchkins are down. You know, when they're all gone and on quarantine, I end up staying up later because that's when I can tend to get some more writing done myself or help my wife out with something. So we will call it a day and we will chat again at another
Okay.
time.
Well, thank you, James. Appreciate it.
It was great talking with you, Brandon, and I look forward to seeing more of your posts about Bali and what it's like to live there because you have convinced me and my wife that we are going to live in Bali, even if it's just for 2 months. We're going to go there and live there for a short period of time.
I would suggest do socio-economic visa and live here for 6 months because 2 months went by just like that. And I would have been like, damn it, I wish I would have stayed longer.
Yeah, I think we're going to end up homeschooling our kids now because this whole virus thing. So we're just going to move up our plans. And if we're going to do that, then we are literally going to move around the world. We plan on
Yeah,
living in Airbnb in it in a couple of different countries around the world. With
it's
our
the way to
kids,
go.
they can you can homeschool. Everything's online. We can write, and it works out great. And they get a way better education that way doing that too. So I want to do that for them.
Yes, and that's pretty much what Tony did too. And I think there's a website called World School, and it's
Right,
really
I've
helpful
seen
for
that. Yep, I
homeschoolers that
looked it
go
up.
around. Yeah.
Yep, got a really good Facebook
Cool.
group. I already joined it.
Oh, nice, sweet.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will chat with you later, Brandon. It was great getting a chance to catch up with you.
All right, thank you, James. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.